Hello Blazers, welcome to episode 45 of UAB Green and Told, original air date Monday, May 10th, 2021. Through this podcast, we are able to share stories from members of the UAB community. If you missed an episode, listen back to all of them on Spotify and the Apple Podcast app. While there, I'd love for you to leave a written review so we can reach more alumni. I'm Greg Berry, a UAB alum and Assistant Director in the UAB Office of Alumni Affairs. There are 3 songs alumni should know: the Alma Mater, Blazer Victory, and our Fight Song. Throughout our university's youthful history, those songs have been played countless times to crowds large and small. Have you ever wondered what's behind those songs? Today, we'll take a closer look at one of them as we welcome Dr. Joel Hearn to UAB Green and Told. Long before he went into a career in dentistry, as Dr. Hearn will share, he found himself having fun gigging at local joints where he grew up.
61, 62, 63, there weren't very many electric bass players. So I had this idea that I was really good.
Ultimately, as bands tend to do, the group of guys he played with broke up, and Joel found himself starting his career working on teeth. But he'd come back to UAB for a second stint, and that's when he saw a solicitation asking for people to submit original work for a new school song.
They set some kind of guidelines about what they wanted, particularly in the lyrics. And I saw that, and I thought, check, I can do that.
And he did. And while he loves the entire song, there's one line that has become his favorite.
They fire the golden blaze, the flame of victory. You know, I think that's pretty good, and it's handy that rhymes with UAB.
Joel Hearn grew up in Tuscaloosa jamming to music. Rock legends Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly were 2 of his greatest influences when he was rocking out with his garage band. At the time, he never would have thought he'd be part of UAB history. But 9 short lines later, he is. 9 lines all Blazers are familiar with. Lines that include words and phrases like green and gold, UAB, victory, Birmingham, and of course, Blazers. But before we find out more about the story behind UAB's Fight Song, we need to get to know a little bit more about Joel Hearn.
Well, you know, I played in garage bands. I started playing bass at about 14 and 15. And, you know, we played all the 3-chord. Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly I idolized and still do idolize Buddy Holly. I started out as a bass player, but I morphed into a keyboard player over the years. And I played in a really fun and good band in Tuscaloosa. And I played my last couple of high school years and my first couple of college years, and then we disbanded.
Did you come from a musical family?
Not really. My sister was really a good player. You know, she kind of got me to the piano, you know, really young, and I sort of took to it. And I never was a good piano student, however, and I never learned to read very well. But I had a really great teacher growing up when I was still back in Birmingham. Her name was Martha McLaurin, and she trained at Juilliard, I found out. I learned a good bit about how to score music, what key you're in. It always helped me. It helped me in church choir, stuff like that. So, you know, I was never a trained musician. I'm an ear player, really. But yeah, I do go back I don't really have, you know, my mother or father need to play.
So where do you think that interest that you had in music came from?
Well, I don't know. You know, I love to listen to music, and then as soon as I could play it, I wanted to play it. And I've been doing it ever since.
And probably like a lot of the youngsters, you had aspirations and dreams of becoming a musician. At what point did it kind of realize, maybe this isn't the thing for me?
I was playing bass, you know, in the early, when 61, 62, 63, there weren't very many electric bass players. So I had this idea that I was really good, you know, and I guess for that purpose of playing in a band like that, I was probably, you know, because let's face it, there weren't that many. But I thought that I could go out to California and play studio sessions because I hear records. I think, I can do that. But, you know, my dad just said, you ain't doing that. And so I started to college like the day after I graduated from high school. He thought I should go in the summer. And I just sort of forgot about it. And years later, I realized that those people playing on those records could read. And so I would have never made it. I mean, let's face it, I was a good, band guy, pretty good player, but I did the right thing. I wasn't good enough to make a career out of it.
When you went to college, did you still dabble in music, or did you quit music and put it behind you for a while?
Our band stayed together about my first 2 years of college. Yeah, and then our band kind of broke up, and I quit after that for a long time. And I had already decided I was going to go to dental school. I had thought about that really since 8th grade. I never really had a serious notion of a music career, but I had fun and I made money at it too. I mean, I had all through in high school. I tell you, I made a lot more money than the guys, my friends, bagging groceries and stuff. And our little band was good, and we played a couple of years. We played a lot of fraternity stuff and dances, proms, and we played at Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, other places. So it was fun, but it was also getting too time consuming, and I needed to get more serious about my future.
What were your favorite songs during that time? Which song did you just really like to jam out to?
Boy, that's hard to say. From those days, gosh, I don't think I could pick one. I liked the Chuck Berry songs. Buddy Holly songs were good, and some of the ballads were good. But I wasn't one to focus on one song. We learned a lot of them.
So your journey kind of took you from Tuscaloosa into the Air Force, and then you were kind of in limbo for a while, not exactly knowing what you wanted to do. You could either go back to the Air Force, or you can go into private practice and go into dentistry, right?
When I got out of the service, I was in Charleston, South Carolina. I didn't have a South Carolina license. I took that exam and I obtained a license. But you're right, I wasn't sure exactly what to do. So I sort of had a little short sabbatical of maybe a few months in there. And what I did was to play piano in a couple of bars in Charleston. Not a very distinguished thing for a dentist to be doing. But then I decided to make the move to Florida. And I moved to Tampa in 1975. I was down there for 3 years.
And at the time, what were you doing down in Tampa?
Practicing general dentistry.
Okay.
I practiced out in the north part of town, Temple Terrace. And I was with a guy down there. We had quite a good practice, and I stayed for 3 years. And when I decided to go into endodontics, of course, that's when I came back to UAB the second time.
You returned to UAB in 1978. How much
Right.
had the school changed between then and the first time you were at school in Birmingham?
A lot, in a number of ways. The physical plant had been redone. Like in 75, Dr. McCallum got a major federal grant. So the clinic was, totally different than it was when I was there, which was very old-fashioned stuff. And so that's one big difference. I was 6 years older. That was another difference. There are more women in dentistry by then, which I think has, been great for the profession. So a lot of differences, but fundamentally it's the same, to try to do your best to take care of people. And I enjoyed, it was two of the best years, 78 to 80, I was there. And those were 2 great years.
One thing that changed that you didn't even mention was the first time there weren't any sports, but the second time there was this basketball team coached by Gene Bartow.
They were starting this basketball program, and they needed a fight song. So that's how it came about. That's how it started.
Did you see a publication, an advertisement that was seeking to get people to write a fight song and submit things? Or how did that whole process go down with you actually noticing that there was a need, and here you are putting your name in and covering that need?
That's an interesting question, and some people should know. Yes, there was an article in the UAB report, and maybe even in the Birmingham News. We need a fight song. They offered a prize, $150. They set some kind of guidelines about what they wanted, particularly in the lyrics. And I saw that, and I thought, heck, I can do that. I had a melody in my mind I'd been kicking around for a while. As I said before, I had had some training growing up So although I didn't have a band background, I had an idea of how I could score this out to present it. So I sat at the piano for a long time. And of course, I developed the way I wanted it to sound, the melody and the chords and the accompaniment, the bass line. And I scored that out. Took me forever because I'm certainly not well trained in that, but I know enough that, I wrote the melody line, I wrote all the chords note by note, and I wrote a bass line because I was a bass player, and I kind of think, well, what would the tuba part sound like? And so I wrote that all out, and I took it over and showed it to my sister-in-law, Barbara, at the time, Barbara Hearn, very highly trained and gifted musician. Well, she took a look at it and she thought I ought to slash about 6 bars out of it, which although I kind of like that part, but it really, she was right. And she said, I know the format, it needs to be 16 measures. So I cut those out that she suggested. I had a B chord in there to transition to the Go Blazers part at the end. And then that was it. So that, cutting it and that made the lyrics much easier to write. The article in the paper said everything that they wanted in the lyrics. We want Birmingham, we want UAB, we want, there were certain things that they said, this is what we want, Blazers. So I just wrote the lyrics and put every darn thing in there that they asked for, And it was handy that victory and UAB rhymed. That made it nice. And so I remember very well working on this. And so then I went back over to my brother's house, and my nephew, Will, was a percussionist in the Berry High School band. So he brought his cymbal. I sat at the piano, and myself, my family, my brother, sister-in-law, niece and nephews, we just sang it on this cheesy tape. The cheesiest little cheap cassette thing with a little microphone. You're too young to remember what those things even are. It was, you're talking about a homemade project. This is it. And we sang it. And so I took my score, I took that tape, and I turned it in. That's it. So that was a submission. So cheesy.
So you sat down to score the song, to write the words, put it all together. You had the music theory background, at least a little bit. You dabbled in a little bit.
Yeah.
Had you ever written anything up to that point?
A few things. But I never had to really write anything down that often. No, you're right. I haven't done it much, But I sort of knew what it should look like. I understand, I wrote in the key of G because I thought that it seemed to lay well at the piano like that. I knew that the wind players in whatever future band might not like that key, and they might, but for me, it laid well on the piano. It laid well to be sung. No, I haven't. That's probably one of the few things I ever did like that. I've done a few. I wrote some little pieces for my grandchildren. I've scored those out. I've done a few things like that over the years. I can't do it fast, and I have to be very laborious. And I spent a lot of time on this, and it looks, it's done in pencil. It looks sort of, I'm sure they looked at it and thought, well, this is it, the song. Had I been a professional musician, and nowadays, you just, it'd all be done on a computer, printed, be all nice. And, we'd have a digital recording of it, and I'm sure it'd be all fancy but in those days, recording was not that easy to do. So I just used a little cheap Walmart little recorder and took it down there. But really, in the end, and some of the other presentations were much more professional, but the songs weren't as good.
From the time you sat down with the melody in your head after you read that announcement for the competition, how long did it take for you to write it, score it, and put it all together?
I spent a lot of time on it, but it was on the weekend. I remember doing it on the weekend, of course, because I was a resident. I had a job down at UAB at that time as an endodontic resident. So, but it was, I hadn't been there long. I don't know exactly what time of year it was. I noticed on the copyright form it was December, but I think it happened before that. And I'll tell you what happened. I knew it was selected, and I got a call, and I was at work one day, and I got a call from someone that they wanted me to come down to the music department, that they had the song ready and they wanted me to hear it. Dr. D. Thomas, the chair of our department, he just basically closed the clinic and we all went down there. I mean, you know, so we all, my fellow residents and I and the chief, and we walked down several blocks, and I don't know where this was. It was, I guess, wherever the band practiced at that time. I went in there and the band was assembled. It wasn't a large band. So we went in, and the band director at UAB, so he conducted and the band played that thing, and I was overwhelmed. I mean, it sounded fantastic. He did a brilliant arrangement of it, in my opinion. But he wrote that thing out, and what really made me feel good, he came up to me, he said, "Son, I love this song. You've done a great job." And boy, I mean, it picked me off the ceiling. I was so tickled.
How floored were you when you found out that they selected your song? Because I'm guessing you had mentioned a lot of the presentations were a little bit more professional. Yours was on a cassette. So it had to come as at least somewhat of a surprise.
Maybe, but I wasn't particularly worried about it. I mean, I was hoping for the best, but I wasn't surprised because, like I said, I thought it was a catchy little tune, had everything they wanted in the lyrics. After it was all said and done, it was all over. A woman I knew in the department, she had me come down, and I heard some of the other songs, and yeah, they were more professional, but they weren't very good. I have to be honest, and there weren't very many of them. It's not like I was Mozart or something, and we beat out a bunch of others. It was just one of those things. It was for fun. Really, it was for fun.
The words, and I'll go ahead and read it. The words are, "At UAB in Birmingham, all hail our players bold. They are the mighty Blazers who wear the green and gold. Tonight lights fire their golden blaze, the flame of victory. Go Blazers, win for UAB." Out of those lines, which one's your favorite?
Well, I think it's kind of good in there. They fire the golden blaze, the flame of victory. I think that's pretty good, and it's handy that rhymes with UAB. The flame of victory has a good ring to it, I think. I've never really thought about it until you asked me that. I mean, let's face it, it's not Milton or Keats. But it's, I've written a song or two over the years, and I think it's fun when the lyrics kind of work with the melody like they did in that. And I guess they still do. They haven't changed the words.
Speaking of changing the words, from the time you sat down with this idea just going through your head, how much did these 8 lines change?
Not much, I don't think. Because I'm looking at the Post-Herald article, and I'm saying, all right, got to get this in here, got to get it in there. Really, though, I spat it out pretty quick, really.
Growing up through all this musician stuff, you play the piano, you play the bass, so you're using your hands. Is there a parallel between music and being a dentist?
I think there is, because a lot of dentists are musical. And, of course, dentistry requires the most minute and extreme level of manual dexterity. Music requires a good bit, too. And so, yeah, you do see a lot of dentists that play guitar and other instruments. And I think there probably is a parallel there. I've never seen it, any science in that regard, but just what I've observed over the years. But I've had a lot of fun with it. I wrote a couple of other songs that were dental related that I wrote for lectures that I gave. So I'd be talking about I'd go to the piano and, I wrote these 2 little songs. I didn't score them out. Didn't have to, because they were never published or anything. But I just used them in the lecture. They were fun, humorous. The thing about doing a root canal is very demanding, concentration-wise, precision-wise. Well, you go home and sit at the piano, it's just the opposite. You're free. Expression, experiment.
Why did you settle on the key of G like you did?
I just sat at the piano, and G is kind of an easy key to play in. Only has one sharp, and it kind of laid in the where I was going to play the melody line. Kind of laid in the middle of the piano, and I tried singing it, and it seemed to fit. So that's what I wrote it in. I don't have any idea what they play it in now. Say you're playing anything in the piano in a certain key. Well, the trombones may be in a totally different key, so you could be a horrible key for them. I guess I've never heard of any music of mine that I composed sound like that. And of course now I've heard it on TV before because it's by the early 80s. I mean, Gene Bartow, we were in the NCAA tournament. I mean, we beat Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And I heard it all on TV. I'm like, God, that's my song.
So is it amazing to reflect and think about, man, I left my legacy on UAB, something that's probably going to withstand the duration of time?
It's a nice little thing, and I think about it from time to time. And when I hear it, it's enjoyable. And I'm always happy when the teams do well. And so, yeah, I think, but I don't, it's not anything like Dr. McCallum has done, or Dr. Volker. I'm pretty low down on the totem pole. I think it's good that one of our own alumni wrote it.
That's Dr. Joel Hearn, the man who wrote and composed UAB's Fight Song. Dr. Hearn is a two-time graduate of the UAB School of Dentistry, earning his D.M.D. in 1972 and completing his residency in endodontics in 1980. As the man behind UAB's Fight Song, Dr. Hearn has a great idea of what it means to be a Blazer.
If you have any more loyal ones in UAB, I don't know. But especially when I was in school from 68 to 72, UAB was just becoming an entity. I guess to be a Blazer to me in those days was to be part of something new, something bright, and something fun. So I guess it means a lot to me to be a Blazer.
Be sure to listen into previous episodes of UAB Green and Told. You can find all of them at alumni.uab.edu/Green and Told. You can also find them on Spotify and Apple Podcast app. Have a story to share? Email greenandtold@uab.edu. Finally, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for @UAB Alumni. Thanks for listening, and until next time, go Blazers.